pressed it, Mina. Don't worry.
Oh, you've done it. Okay, thank you.
We are live. I hope my volume, is it okay?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Now I can hear you perfectly, Ma. So we are just going to give it maybe 2 more minutes for people to just walk into the room.
Walking into the
Walk
room.
into the room.
Sangena, sangena, sangena phakathi.
Ay, ay. Sangena. Ay,
Sangena phakathi.
Baba nomzane.
Nazo-ke. Sekunjalo sesiyangena phakathi.
Sangena phakathi. We'll just give
Absolutely.
it just a few minutes because I want to do justice to this hour that we have.
Yebo.
I want us to start as soon as possible because I think there's a lot of renewal and regeneration that we are going to experience. So I want to make sure, Gutsi, I do justice to that. To our conversation. I'll just go to the chats. Let's wait for people.
I'm sorry? Not yet. Yeah.
Have my water.
Water. What's up? Water. Say
Dwayne, ma, with slices of citrus fruit to nourish the body.
Oh yes.
It's very important, ma.
Absolutely.
Nourish the body. So as people are coming in, whoever's joined us, so that we know that we are here with all of you. You can just type a hello, comment, Wuti, who are you, and who's joining us for this conversation. And then I promise that we will kickstart in the next minute. So just who's joined us, who are you, hello, and then we will comment.
City Sanbonani. To honor the spirit in each and every one of you. That's how we greet. We say Sanbonani.
Sanbonani. We see you.
Yeah, we see you. Doesn't matter which part of the world I go to, whether I'm in Argentina, no I'm in Japan, I'm in Sweden, I'm in Canada, wherever, whether I'm in Senegal, in Ethiopia, I say Sanbonani. I greet them that way. We see you. I honor the spirit inside each and every one of you.
Yeah, siyabonga ma. So I see I can comment because I see a couple of people are joining the session. Welcome, Sanbonani, Dumelang, Absheni. Okay, that's as far as I can go. Thank you so much to everyone who's just joined us this Thursday evening. I know I never take it for granted, people choosing to dedicate a particular portion of their time to just partake in some of the work that we do at Pin the Vision and the work that I do, as somebody who deeply is called to deliver messages in our generation. So welcome to what we have termed the Full Color Leader series. This is our third installment, and today we have the great one. South Africa's national treasure, a global treasure, an African treasure. Umam Doctor as Usfiso Skenjan, I was listening to your interview. Dr. Mama, I'm like, hey, yeah, Namangazi, Dr. Mama.
Yeah.
Umam Mhlophe, and really just going to, and receive from her this evening. So just to get some logistics out of the way to everyone who's joining us. So if you have any questions or comments or just whatever that you have, I'm going to ask that you pop those in the comment section, and then Unosi who's in the background somewhere, especially the questions, she's going to compile all the different questions that we are getting on the different social media platforms. And then at the end, I think, we're going to dedicate the last 10 minutes where Uma is just going to answer some of those questions. And then we're also going to share details around how you're going to order the Thinking in Full Color book, which really is the foundation for the conversation that we are having today. Cool, I'll get straight to it. So, igama lami, my name is Bongeka Mhlongo, Unjomani Makedama. Ubebe thina savela elangeni. I just thought I'll start that because I know Uma is very big on how you introduce yourself and your identity, and making sure that we preserve our heritage. So I am the founder of Pen the Vision, which is a content creation organization that creates content around purpose. Anyone who knows how much I love purpose, and I am an advocate for living your purpose. And I think because of that, I'm able to come before the great. It is your gift, I truly believe, that brings you before great men and women. And our commitment at Pen the Vision is to share content to encourage our generation to pursue and to live the purpose that is already in them, right? But the second hat that I wear, which is the foundation for today's conversation, is I'm the author of this book titled Thinking in Full Color. Yes! And you're matching my Thinking in Full Color. Which I wrote it. It's really a collection of ideas that I hope to use to impact my generation positively. And when I created the book, the spirit was always to trigger conversations, ideas, new thinking that will, help us build a better future, not only as South Africans, but as Africans and as global citizens who are seeking to reimagine our position in the world. So, tonight's conversation really then, sets, or rather, tonight's conversation is very much inspired by my book. And for those of you who have the book already, you would know that page 76, which is the essay titled "The Rise of Inclusive Literature," I talk about how introduction of Mam Gcina's book in high school changed my life. And I never in my wildest dreams did I think I'll actually be sitting here and having a conversation with her tonight. So, Ma, to just kick off our conversation and our topic, for today, which really is about storytelling and inclusive literature and how that is a gift to nation building. I wanted to start at the beginning, because I believe in the genesis of things. And I know you've been asked this question. Many people know you as Umam Gcina, the great storyteller of our time, the author, the writer, the performer, and all of these great accolades. But I want to know, who is Umam Gcina? How would you describe yourself? And in answering that question, I'm curious around what was said to you by your parents that made you so uncompromising to live out Ubuntu Bako, your Africanness. Because, Ma, you were woke before woke was popular. You were because I feel that when we were growing up, and let's be honest, I'm going to be honest, we idolized American stories. We wanted to be American and European because those were the stories that we consumed. Even as kids, we consumed Disney World and all, and so we wanted to be American. But I remember you were woke, uncompromising when woke wasn't as popular as it is popular right now. You were there. You have always been pro-Africa, pro-Isintu, pro-heritage. What was said to you by your parents or the community you grew up around that made you say, I am proud of this thing? And so in answering this question of who is Umam Gcina, please can you also just bring that context into it?
Ngiyabonga kakhulu, ngiyabonga Njomane. It is so important for us to have these intergenerational dialogues. I'm longing for more of these platforms and opportunities. Ngithi ngibonge thina bakoMhlophe ozindela onkomonhle othumbeza ophuthaza abaphuthaza izulu abanye belesaba ontombeze ndangonyezi ezabafokazana zenda ngomnyama yithi labo. Uyazi uma sikhuluma ngemvelaphi yethu ngicabanga ukuthi kumele sibuyele kulezi ayikhathi mawuthi mawenze okuhle abazali babonge bathi awuthumbeza immediately abantu abadala they praise you as you've done something small. Uhambe olanda ingilazi yamanzi efuna ukuphuza umuntu omdala. Maybe ushanelile la igcekeni nje, nothing big. You just swept a little bit of the yard and it's a big achievement and they praise you. And when you have done well at school, bakikiza abantu abadala bashiya ithakazelo because they don't want to be the ones who experience your little achievement. They want the ancestors to be present, to be bearing witness to this growing little child of this family. I remember also as I grew up and traveled to different places, I remember Gogo, the one who traveled with me. I always say this when I do my show, we're traveling bag. Ukuthi ugogo wayehlalethi mkhulu umhlaba nokugcina, mkhulu umhlaba. There's a bigger world out there. Ngokwami mina ngangicabanga ukuthi phela usho ukuthi KwaZulu Natal yabo. Whole world in my mind. It was not the world my grandmother was talking about. So when I said ngiyazi gogo ngiyazi aqha awazi hlala phansi. Abe sethi ugogo iKwaZulu Natal is a small place in Ningizimu Africa, meaning South Africa. Aphinda athi iNingizimu Africa is a small place in what Gogo called izwekazi le-Africa, simply meaning the continent. I didn't know what is izwekazi, but I thought my grandmother knows things. Kusho ukuthi uqinisile. Adlula ugogo athi izwekazi le-Africa is a small place in a bigger world out there. It was like a prophecy. Ukuthi this little last born child yakamhlophe uzo hamba awubone lo mhlaba, this bigger world out there. She thinks she knows the world, she doesn't know anything yet. And now people ask me, where have you been? Which countries? I say, let's start with the countries I have not been to. You see? Because I've seen the world. I've been to so many countries. I've raised the flag again and again in those countries. And I remember also the fact that it was so important to speak your mother tongue. I remember Gogo telling stories using beautiful words like "Nyawo zami nake nangenzelani." When you say that in English, my feet, what have you ever done for me? Their feet.
Doesn't sound
little things like these. And ati lapilanga seliyoyilahla kunina. The sun is going to throw itself in the bosom of its mother. You mean the son has got a mother who's got a big bosom? Oh, you see all of these wonderful, beautiful expressions, the sayings of our people. These are the things that made me fall in love with isiZulu in the beginning. And then I went to school. Nasi singisi sesiyangena lapho siculo blah blah black shin any woo yes yes. So siyaculo blah blah black shin labo ke. And then then I went to live in the Eastern Cape. I was forced quite quickly to learn to speak isiXhosa. And I thought if I learn to speak isiXhosa, I'm going to have a sense of belonging in this place I didn't know yet, but I was going to fall in love with the beauty of the language, the picture drawing miracle of our languages. And so when I finally started writing at the age of 17, I wrote in isiXhosa. And then I continued writing into English, and then isiZulu. Nowadays, I write in 3 languages: isiZulu, isiXhosa, English, isiNgisi. And I might be writing a poem, it comes in isiXhosa. I might be writing a song, it comes in isiZulu or in English. Whatever, I use these 3 languages interchangeably. I'm doing a lot of playing and ballroom dancing with languages. And also, you look at certain expressions that came with our parents reminding us to be hardworking human beings, to know that you can never achieve anything without working hard. My father kept on repeating, "Ayikho inkomo yobuthongo." You will never earn it through sleeping. So if you want to achieve anything, you work hard for it. They looked at the ants, they looked at the bees, they looked at the creatures, look at the weaver bird, how it builds. Such an intricate, it doesn't have hands, it just has its mouth and its little feet, and that's it. And it makes the most beautiful. I think it is the original builder in the world. And so we were taught all of those things, you see, and I'm grateful to have had parents who believed in sharing their wisdoms and their values with us. And they repeated, because we don't hear the first time, no? You have to repeat. And then finally, when the penny drops, you think, "Hayibo, uMaka deqinisile. Hayibo, auntie." So finally, that's why grown-ups used to repeat these things. And I'm grateful that at some point the penny dropped and I adopted all of those wisdoms and values and teachings, and I took them with me into my journey as a young adult and all the way to where I am today.
Wow. Ma, I'm curious, Nate, without trying to make a generalization necessarily, but, you know, growing up in a time, I'm assuming you grew up in apartheid South Africa for a particular portion of your life, and the opportunities for our people, Black people, were, you know, perhaps were quite limited in terms of what career avenues you could explore. You know, we've often been told you could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, you could be a police officer, and there were very few people who obviously got on to do other things. Now, this young child, I'm sure, how do you decide, I'm going to be a storyteller? What was it that you saw as a career? How did it find you? I'm just curious, how did you get into this career path that obviously that we have all come to know you for?
In the beginning, I wanted to be a teacher. My first teacher left an indelible mark. I mean, yes, I was going to be Miss Dlamini. Forget this man. That's how much of a hero or a shiro he was to me and many other students at primary school, Hammersdale. And government primary school, Hammersdale. I thought I would grow up to become Miss Dlamini. You see? And so I always thought of myself growing up to become a teacher. I remember even when I came back from school, whatever we were taught in school, whether it was songs or some lessons, I borrowed my cousin, who's Beauty. I'm a high heel walk. You know, 6-7 years. And I stood in front of the flowers and I taught the flowers everything that I was taught at school. I sang with them, and sometimes they didn't sing so well. You don't do something that you don't want to be done unto you. And without opening a Bible, just saying that you must never do something you wouldn't like to be done unto you. You must remember everything that grows has feelings. That's environmental.
Wow.
The plants have got feelings. You know, everything that grows has feelings. Wow. And I never, ever beat up the flowers and the plants again. And then also remembering that if you want the things that you were taught at school to be learned by these plants that you thought they are your class, since we know Miss Damini, repeat. repeat, repeat. And nowadays, the number of people who know me, who hear Mam Gcina saying the same thing over and over again, I always say, a story repeated is a story remembered. A story repeated is a story remembered. And I'm talking about our history telling, the stories of the history of our people. Even where we come from in apartheid South Africa, there are people who achieved so much and they sacrificed everything in order for us to have a better life. And at the time, our parents also protected us. I remember the time Babu Albert Luthuli came back from winning the Nobel Prize, Pesheya. Maibuya, he addressed the people that were gathered at the steps of the city hall at Ethekwini. When I asked my father, Baba, uyamazi umama unokukhanya Luthuli? Ubaba unikile ekhaya. Hayi angimazi-ke unokukhanya, because she's female. They hardly ever honor women leaders and sheroes. And she achieved so much. If you gave us 2 hours to talk about Mama Nokukanya alone, forget the other women leaders, we could fill the 2 hours talking about Umama Nokukanya Luthuli, the wife of Chief Albert Luthuli. Abuzu baba ubani yena loyo? Ngithi she was the wife of Chief Albert Luthuli. Athi baba uyayeni webantu. Hawu uMthuli. Hayi kwakuyiqhawe lelo esebuya le phesheya esemile eTebhisini eCity Hall esekhuluma nathi sasimla. Ubaba suddenly became excited talking about Chief Albert Luthuli when he addressed them on his return from receiving the Nobel Prize. And he was the first Black person in Africa to receive a Nobel Prize. And I don't know if you remember the way he was dressed in and he spoke isiZulu.
Wow.
So Ubaba was excited. And so he talked about this because they knew I had this connection to the Luthuli family. I loved Mama Nokukanya and I still love her today. She's my hero. When I talk about the first person I praise is Mama Nokukanya Luthuli.
Wow.
And so Ubaba talked about Chief Albert Luthuli. And he has done so much. And his book, Let My People Go, should be read in schools. But it is not, because we don't honor our history, you see. And so all of those things for me, the teachings that I got from my family and the greater family, because sometimes it was omakhelwane, baba badala nani nasesontweni. When I went to live in the Eastern Cape, ubaba wayiphatha umsimbithi. The induku yomsimbithi esecula ethi siphethe ikrele lomoya izwi likaThixo eqhamuka le ntabeni eya eyimvuselelweni. Immediately when we heard his voice, we knew ukuthi ubaba uNgqayimbana lo. We got ready and we traveled namakhehla amadala nezalukazi endala. Siphethe ikrele ikrele lomoya izwi likaThixo izwi likaThixo izwi likaThixo. And we followed abantu abadala siye enkonzweni because they lived what they taught. So for me, apartheid affected us, but abantu abadala found a way of shielding us, And when we finally came face to face in apartheid, we realized, hayibo, kubi la eNingizimu Afrika, kubi, and we had to choose. We're going to keep ourselves blinded, or we're going to learn more. Are we going to participate? Are we going to deal with the consequences? Because when you participate in making change in the freedom struggle, you will meet the consequences as well. So yes, we went through what we went through, but we never thought this was it. We always said as we marched in the street, dodging bullets and hiding and going to all kinds of places, we said freedom in our lifetime, freedom in our lifetime. And we said, teach one, each one teach one, each one teach one. When you learn something, teach others. And often we don't do that today. Whatever it is that you learn, you must teach others. And an injury to one is an injury to all. And so to understand that we are a people, you see, many of our comrades did not see freedom in their lifetime because we were lucky enough to be there. Masio vote on 27th April. We were lucky to be able to stand in those long snaking queues. And when we finally stood there, I've made it, I've signed it, the tears run down. You think, my, how lucky I am. But we understood it was an end of a chapter and the beginning of another chapter.
Sure. So Ma, like what I'm getting from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you getting into storytelling was a
A journey.
combination of things, a journey of different
A journey.
contributions. But one of
Journey.
the things to touch on particularly was this thing, we lived in a country where you couldn't be silent to the injustices that were happening. And I love that so much because you're reminding me of a quotation that I read a while ago, and I loved it. And I have an elements of it in my book. And this
Mhm.
person said that storytellers are able to afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted by
Mhm.
stories that they deliver. And I just thought so profound, so
Yeah.
profound,
Yeah.
and but then I started asking myself, even as I was thinking about this conversation, I started asking myself, what is a story, or what is storytelling? Because sometimes we think, oh, okay, it's just to tell a story. But as a renowned storyteller, in the most simplest definition, when you think of storytelling, and particularly storytelling around as we reimagine ourselves as a nation and as a
Mm.
continent, what is the best definition that we can give to what storytelling is?
I would say story is narrating happenings of certain events. And we used to hear stories of long,
Mm,
long ago, izinganekwane. And
mm,
those stories were stories that were based on things that happened a long, long time ago. Sometimes it was animals and birds and insects and pythons and what creatures that lived in those long amazimzim, the
mm.
men-eating ogres, and all of
Yeah,
those things were so far removed. And
yeah.
then suddenly there was a lesson there. There was something that
Mm,
woke up in you. Aibo, uqinisile. And suddenly you realize it had a package, something to teach you. It was the
mm,
like the original of religious teachings in the African spirituality. It was the
mm,
origin of informal education in African education. It was
mm,
the passing on of values about a culture of a people, about the traditions of a people, of why do you have umemulo, why
mm.
umhlonyane, why
Beautiful.
abantwana beya entabeni, abesilisa beya entabeni. All of these
Mm,
things that we needed to do, nokuthi umshado uyini,
mm,
kukhulunywa ngokubopha ifindo lomshado, oh indandatho. All of those things were embedded in the stories. And
mm.
so when you look at storytelling post 1994, storytelling, it is about us sharing the stories of where we come from.
Wow.
Storytelling for me also
Wow.
is about reawakening the voice in each other. You see, I
Mhm.
remember Bessie Head was interviewed many years ago, 1972. I was too young. I'm so glad nobody asked me that question. But they asked Bessie Head. She was an amazing writer,
Yeah.
born in Ndlovu, had a very difficult childhood. She was a very good journalist, and as well as an author, a novelist, and poetry, wrote many things, a very inspirational writer. She was interviewed, and the question was, how do you think the revolution will come one day in South Africa? Her
Mm,
response was, it is impossible to guess how the revolution will come
mm,
one day in South Africa, but in a world where all ordinary people are fighting for their rights, it is inevitable. But it is
mm,
also to be hoped that Southern Africa might one day become the home of the
mm,
storyteller and dreamer who did not hurt others but only introduced new dreams that fill the heart with wonder, new dreams that fill the heart with wonder. That's Bessie Head talking,
mm.
telling
Yeah.
the stories that wake up magic in each and every one and
Mm,
filling the heart with wonder. And we
yeah.
must do that. Don't hurt each other. Don't bring each other down. Don't make another person feel small, feel like
Yeah.
whatever gift, whatever purpose they are here for is
Yeah.
insignificant, because each
Yeah.
and every one of us have a purpose.
Wow. Oh,
That's
ma.
storytelling for you. It's many, many stories. And I always repeat that when people say, why do you tell stories? You need to be able to answer why in whatever line of work you do, whether you're a chartered accountant, whether you
Yes.
are a fashion designer, whether you are a scientist, whether you are a marine biologist, you've got to be able to answer why you do what you do. Yeah.
Yes.
When I
Yeah.
answer the why, it's very
Yeah.
simple. I repeat the same answer every single time. I say, I wake up stories in other people. That's why I tell stories, in order to wake up stories in other people, because I truly believe each and every human being has got a story to tell.
Wow. And Ma, you woke that up in me as a young girl, and I want to read that extract because
Yeah.
you live that. That very thing that you're saying inspired this essay. I don't know if people can see it. To those who have the book, it's essay 25, page 76. You know
Yes.
what is fascinating about this, Ma? I was listening to your conversation on Power FM, Power Business with Uspiso Skenjana
Yeah.
I think it was on Monday,
Yeah.
and I got goosebumps with when Usviso was sharing how the introduction of Ubabu Zekson book, The Heart of Redness, in 1 year at school, it impacted him so profoundly. And in fact, he did so well in that year, more than other years. And I laugh because it's almost as if he had read my book. I wrote word for word, but for me, it was
Yes.
that. And I want to read that snippet because I want us
Yes,
to get
please do.
conversation around. So I won't read the. So my book is very interesting, guys. Get the book, get the book, get the book. But it's a screenshot that I'd written on Facebook because I use social media as my thinking space. So I wrote a screenshot. I won't get into the screenshot, but on social media, asking people, guys, and people who know me know that I'm silly. As much as I'm a thinker and I'm also quite silly. And I was asking them, but why did we study Shakespeare at school? No, I don't have anything against Shakespeare. People mustn't attack me, but I was being just sharing my truth. But I want to start the post in I want to read from page 76, the bottom of the post, and I wrote, I know the Shakespearean language was poetic, and there were some lessons we needed to learn. But to be honest, I did not do that well in that part of my English subject. It was not that I did not comprehend what I was reading, but rather I could not relate to the experiences that Shakespeare was writing about. But I remember when Dr. Gcina Mhlophe's short stories were introduced as part of our curriculum. That was the game changer for me. And I mean, I go on to share which particular story. And it was so fascinating when Uspiso said that what made The Heart of Greatness, which I've also read, which is a beautiful book,
Yes.
by
Beautiful book.
Ubabu Zeki, an amazing
Great
book.
author. Great author.
Oh my gosh, an amazing
Absolutely.
historical book. It is an incredible book. And he said he could see himself, he could see his people in that sort. And that's what for me, your stories did. For the first time, I could see, and I excelled. I also talk about in the book, I excelled in that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And
Bongeka's in the house. Tisha,
yes,
we are
I
going to name
excelled.
Tisha.
I think my Shakespeare marks were very shaky. But when your stories were introduced, and it was that I could comprehend. So because I could relate, my comprehension when I would ask something in the assignment or the exam, I could connect, and therefore I could answer, and because I could relate to the stories. And I talk about in the book the power of literature that is inclusive, that feature all types of experiences and all types of stories, right? And the title of this conversation is really around how the gift of storytelling and inclusive literature as part of nation building. As a
Yes.
storyteller, as somebody who cares about language, and I'll talk about the language the question next, but just
Yes.
starting on, to you, why do you think it's important as we are reimagining a new South Africa? Because we're still reimagining,
We
actually.
still.
A new South Africa. It didn't stop when we voted in 1994. We will continue to reimagine for as long as we need to. Why do you think your role as storytellers and your role in literature, and us documenting inclusive literature, why do you think that is important, as one of the tools that help us to transform our society?
Ngiyabonga. I think when you look at inclusive literature, we need to write in such a way that we understand we are sharing with others. You are playing your role, and then it's like we're building this massive house, and every little contribution is a brick. Every little contribution is a brick, or it could be a stone. Beautiful. The stones are different sizes and shapes, you know, and they climb on top of each other, on top of each other, until you've made this massive building. That is our nation. That is South Africa. I'm a very patriotic person.
You
And
are.
no matter how much I have traveled in the past 38 years around the world, I never forget ukuthi uNkulunkulu wangitshala la eNingizimu Afrika, inkaba yami yembelwe la, and I will never want to be a citizen of any other nation. I know this is a difficult thing to say when you know that many people have been uprooted and forced to leave their homes and go to exiles, like some of our people have had to exile and bebebhadula kumazwe ngamazwe, you know. So it happens all the time, and then the migration is constant. But in the stories that we are telling, let's include one another to know that my experience is important, yes, but yours is just as important. I also think when you are writing, you shouldn't be belly gazing so much. I think you've got to be conscious that you've got an audience out there. You've got to also understand ukuthi ulimi obhala ngalo, whether you write in isiZulu or isiXhosa, noma ubhala ngesingisi, isiSuthu, Sepedi, Tshivenda, the different languages, Kiswahili. Let's use those languages to share, almost like you're dishing up a meal with one another. So that is the role of a storyteller. The operative word is sharing. And storytellers are language lovers. And so when you are choosing your words as you are describing something or painting pictures in the mind of the listeners, you know, the number of people I have met over the years, like I used to do storytelling on radio, sometimes Gumhlobo Wenene ngeXhosa, Ukhozi FM ngeSizulu. People say I used to wait for that 8 o'clock next to the radio to listen. And I thought you were telling the story to me alone. They would listen. And I remember the number of people who would say to me, but how did you know that I was listening? I said, I didn't know you were listening, but I gathered my audience around me. The sound engineers would laugh at me. They thought I looked ridiculous. I was crazy. But I was not in front of a microphone. I was sitting in front of a large audience, my people listening to stories. Whether I sang a song, whether I did a chant, whether I described this creature, whether it was disgusting, whether it was good looking, all of that, be conscious that you're sharing something, and never tell a story you don't love. Never share a lesson you don't believe in. Never guide somebody to a path you wouldn't want to walk. So I'm very conscious of all of those things as a storyteller, and I'm a big fan of history telling. You know, mangicabanga abantu bafana no Babu Eskia Mphahlele, mangicabanga abantu bafana no Babu Credo Mutwa, Mama Miriam Tladi. You know, another great author that I've loved over the years, Mariam Abba from Senegal. You know, all of these people, Miriam Makeba, she was our empress of song. She continues to be, and we need to honor her again and again and again. So all of these stories, they might be embedded in the songs we sing, in the poems we recite, in the chants we share with one another, in the stories we tell, in the history books we write, or in the lessons when we do motivational speaking, even to business people. They get messages from ancient wisdoms, our African wisdoms. We need to share those. But if you don't believe in it, you can't teach anybody.
Yeah. You know, just picking up on, like, you know, as you were sharing, like a couple of things come to me, right? I'm thinking about, maybe I'm gonna move now around, you know, the economic aspect of it. You know, and what I mean by that is, how important is it that those who own the platforms that where stories are told, that it's diverse people? Because I'm thinking that the owners of the platform, and platform I mean, for example, that the people who determine what gets taught in school, That is the platform, right? The people
Yes.
who decide if we are looking at the national broadcaster, the SABCs in South Africa, who like, how important is it that those who own platforms where storytellers can share diverse stories? How important is it that we have diverse people having the economic power and influence, and it's not one group or one racial group having power? Because I think if it's one racial group that has that owns the platform, then it means it impacts who gets invited to those platforms. What are your thoughts around that in terms of how do we own the economic power to allow many types of diverse stories to be told, and it's not just limited to a select few, or stories are not limited to a select few?
I would like to say people who have got the light shining off on them must reflect that light and shine it on other people. See,
Mm.
when I get a platform, I make sure I bring other people into that space.
Mm.
Otherwise,
Mm.
what kind of light am I? If I'm
Mm.
just going to be shining in a small place, I must be a light that spills over and makes other people aware of what I have experienced and what I have learned. And even when I hear about good news, about someone who has done something special, ngithi, "Hayibo, uke wezwa, so and so has done this, has done that, and done that." It's like mangikhuluma ngoSiyabulela Xuza. The number of times when I go to high schools, ngibabuze, "Have you heard of Siyabulela Xuza?" No.
Who's that?
Never heard of Sabulela Xuza, because the media doesn't repeat those stories. And you talk about abantu abafana nomama unokuthela Mdima. You mentioned abamazi ukuthi ubani. And there are many people, Mama Noni Jabavu, our pioneers. There are so many people who've done so much. So the people in the broadcasting space, whether it is on radio, on television, or you are able to speak to great audiences, make sure you bring names of other people who have achieved a lot. Life is not about Gcina Mhlophe. I always say, when we were taught do re mi fa sol lapha esikoleni, sibashaya do re mi fa sol la ti do, and then do ti la so fa mi 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 mi. If you're stuck on that me, and you're thinking about me, life is not always about me. It's about a lot of other people who have achieved so much, and also people who've come before us. I went into somebody's house a few days ago. I went into Dr. Mtsi's house, and there were 4 paintings by Hargreaves Ntukwana. Oh my Lord! The moment I walked into that house, I smiled from ear to ear. And the daughter was asking, "What's going on, Mama?" Ngijabulela ukuba la ekhaya, yebo, but I see you've got the works of the great artist Hargreaves Ntukwana. He illustrated 2 of my first books, and I found out about him because of the publisher, Mutobi Butwaze from Scotterville Publishers. The first 2 books ever that I ever published, The Snake with 7 Heads and The Queen of the Tortoises, were illustrated by the great artist Hargreaves Ntukwana. Let's talk about those names. So people who got the privilege of telling stories, tell stories about those who came before us, those who are on the journey with us, those who are arising and doing wonderful things. Mangitshela abantu ngoBongeka Mhlongo, babuza ukuthi uba manje loyo. Hawu, wayehamba nomama uCharlotte Maxeke, ngithi qha, isizukulwane seyizukulwane. She's here. Uyabona leyo nto le. So I get excited when I see young people doing wonderful things. And the stories that we tell must be more than just one story. It must have dimensions. It must awaken. It must inspire. It must reignite the fire inside you to think, if so and so can do it with so little budget. With so little budget, wenza ukuthi nokuthi, hayibo manje mina nginqatshelwa uba, what's stopping me? So it is not always about money. It is not always about connections. It is about starting where you are. Little by little by little, bloom where you are. I don't know if you've seen those plants that grow amongst big rocks. Isiyakhula lento, into yakhona isibheka phezulu, ibisiyaqhakaza imbali dadewethu kababa. How did it do that? We can do that as well.
Wow, ma. Wow. So one of the things that again, as ukuluma, when you say, we tell stories where we are, or tell the stories where you are, and we have to tell all types of stories that have various dimensions. I think we have to tell full color stories, which is part of my also, in life. Now I'm curious, Ma. Maybe this is just one of my very childlike questions. Is everyone a storyteller? Like, are they people who are special that God calls and says, yes, Gcina Mhlophe, I anoint you as the storyteller of your time? Or can anybody be a storyteller? And I ask it again, trying to draw back around nation building. Uguti, if indeed we are seeing the necessity of storytelling, how do we better equip as storytellers, whether in education, from studying from school, studying from our homes, so that we see this as critical. You know how sometimes there's almost this thing that there are more other careers that are more important than others.
Yes.
How do we invest in storytelling as a government? But I think for me, it's just those two questions. Is everyone a storyteller?
Everybody has got a story to tell, okay? And there are different ways of telling your story. You see, there are different ways of telling your story. I think of people who Umamunesta Nala. She was amazing, a potter. She did a Zulu pots and what. She told her stories in pottery.
Sure.
She tells stories in color, in full color. She does wonderful things. Another one of my heroes, Umamunori Amabasa. Hello, there's an amazing woman. Or Sistoli Ratebe. And you can tell stories by making films. You see, you can tell stories by coming back. I want to be architecture. Hello, are you listening? Architects out there, can you tell stories in the types of buildings you design? You don't want to watch what colonial splendor. I'm done with colonial splendor. Maybe advertises people who sell properties, but advertise colonial splendor. My foot. Can we have architecture that speaks to where we are? Look at the map. We're in the African continent. Can we have buildings arising that say this was built by an African architect? I'm begging you. And the same thing when we are talking about the types of meals. How many chefs do you know that aspire to bring the excitement in the taste of African food, real African food? You don't need to bring the Indianness into our African food. You don't need to Italianize African food. They will never do that. In Italy, they would never bring anything African in their recipes. In India, they'll never do anything in their recipes. So let's look at as a chef, you are a storyteller. There are many people then who are storytellers in different ways. Jewelry designers. The lady who does my beadwork.
Yeah.
Now, and then you've got fabulous and she has written a book about the language spoken by the beads, the colors they speak, they say something. So there are different ways of telling stories, and other people write their stories. They don't want to be making noise like Gcina Mhlophe, man. They want to take it easy. And then you send out the books, they get published, and people read, and the words come out of the page. They come off the page because of the way that you write. And so there are different ways of telling stories, but I truly believe everybody has got a story to tell. And let's listen to each other's stories. Pretty End in opera. You understand? She's raising the flags all over the world. Who are talking, who are representing us in telling stories in different forms around the world, in dance.
The storytelling, and it's so powerful. You reminded me of something somebody said in the class, that the course that I'm attending, and she was saying, actually, if you think about it, as human beings, we are stories. That's what we are. Like, even if when you and I meet, we connect on our stories. That's a story, and we connect basis of stories. And I love what you're saying, Ma. we all have a story, but the expression that
Yes, yes.
you use is different. But
Medium that
really,
proves.
all that we are as human
Oh,
beings is
we are
stories.
still,
Stories. We are
yes.
stories. And I think that
Let's
what
talk about
makes
the healing element of the creative arts.
no problem.
Let's talk about the healing element of the creative arts in general. People who
Mm,
are in the creative arts or the heritage space are
mm,
healers. You
mm,
see, that's our job. We are healers. We've been called. When I moved from
mm,
full-time theater
mm,
into full-time
mm,
storytelling, people were worried.
mm, mm.
Other people were
Yeah,
depressed. They
yeah.
didn't know what I was doing, but I felt
Mm.
the wings unfurling. I felt like
Wow.
I could take to the skies because I went into full-time storytelling,
Wow.
and I understood that
Mm.
I'm a healer. That the stories that I'm telling can bring people together in a way that in other settings they wouldn't be able to tell stories or to heal, to reconnect. You know, the number of times I wrote a song when I went into the beginning of my storytelling years in 1991, 1992. I call on you, sky, you sun, and the moon, you earth, and the sea. Give me the wisdom I need, Yelelema, to tell the story. Yelele, to tell the story and bring back respect to our culture. Ngixoxe le ndaba, ngixoxe le ndaba, eyo ngixoxe le ndaba, eyo ngixoxe le ndaba, elele ngixoxe le ndaba, elele ngixoxe le ndaba, kubuye inhlonipho yamasiko ethu. Asibuyise inhlonipho nokuphilisana, nokukhuthazana, nokwakhana, nokubambisana singama-Afrika.
Amen. Oh ma, I wanna before I go into the beautiful ma, before I go into the guys, this is I don't know who's enjoying this, but this feels like a show. We don't even have to buy tickets, and we are we are just indulging in mass storytelling in all ways, through song, through wisdom, and mass. We're so grateful. But the point that you said, that storytellers are healers, that is so profound for me and so true. And one of the things I wrote in the book, in the essay, I spoke about the case for the artist, where I was arguing the
Yeah,
importance of art and the artists, and why we need to respect the artists, because they really heal our world. And one of the
yeah.
quotes by Umamu Toni Morrison,
Woo.
she says this: we speak, we write, we do language, and that
Yep.
is how civilizations heal. And she is referring to artists, to storytellers, to creators.
Mm,
We
mm.
heal our civilizations through the words, the
Correct.
messages, the
Yep.
artistry, that we deliver. And thank you, Ma, for raising that. And I'm
Yes,
conscious
yes.
of time, and I know that I still have so much I want to ask, but I don't want this to be about me. I know other some questions waiting, because we have an audience who's joining us, and I also want to do justice to some of the questions they've raised. So, Ma, I'm going to I see Unosi has popped the questions here in our private chat, so I'm gonna read them one by one,
Okay.
and then I'm gonna read them and then ask you to just share your thoughts and your wisdom around that, and then we will wrap up. Cool.
Yeah.
The first question is: in 2022, as young adults, us who grew up in a free South Africa, how can we begin to honor our history in our everyday living? Very beautiful question.
Mm, mm, mm.
Mm,
I think let us sharpen our ears and
mhm,
listen more often, because history is around us. Bakhona
mm,
abantu abadala, and many elders, when we take the time to sit down and talk to them, they will
mm,
tell us things we didn't even know we didn't know. You see? And
mm.
I know we are in for grandmother Google. Nyam nyam tandu grandmother Google. Uyazazi. What grandmother Google doesn't know me, grandmother Google
Mm,
doesn't love me. So
mm,
be with people who are older than you, the elders around you. And some of them have hardly ever been to school. They've hardly had any formal education, but they've lived. their academic achievement, because they have lived. Listen to the journeys they've traveled. You will live those stories too.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you, Ma. Listen. And then another question. In 2022, how do we use storytelling to shift us as a nation? I don't know what the shift to, but yeah, I guess to shift us to a better place.
We need to shift. If you brought 20 South Africans into one place who said, okay, I give you permission to complain. Huh? 2 hours. But no, 2 hours is not enough. 2 hours. We'll complain, and no ways it won't be enough. If you said to them, I'm giving you 1 hour to tell good stories, to shift the thinking. That's what is too much. We just don't have that many stories to tell because we don't want to see the positive things that are taking place in our country. You see, there's a lot that is positive taking place in this lifetime. You see? And so it is up to us to see the happenings, the lessons, the teachings, the inspirations, the plants that grow in places where you don't expect them to grow. To watch people of all ages achieving things nobody ever expected them to achieve. So let's shift and be more nation builders than we are. People give me, give me, give me, give me. We can do less of the song. Give me, give me, give me, give me. Share, grow, and give others and build this nation. Every single one of us, we are part of those bricks or those rocks, those stones that build this massive building that is South Africa or the continent.
Beautiful. And as you say that, you're reminding me of one of our previous guests. Unobund Webster was our previous guest for the Full Color Leader series, and he said something similar. He said you have to be the change that you want. You have to become what you want to see in the world. And oftentimes, when we talk about change in our nation, we're always pointing a finger, but actually, many a time it should be this. What can I do as with the gift and the skills and the experience that I have to actually shift my nation? So very beautiful, Ma. Thank you. And then there's a beautiful question here. How do I become a storyteller in my life? Someone wants to.
You need to tell a story about, people say, how do I start to write? Start where you are. Write about what you know. You realize many writers around the world, they write about their own personal experiences, and then they graduate to other experiences or fiction or whatever. And sometimes even when people write in fiction, there's something of themselves that comes in there. When they least expect it, it just infuses itself into whatever they call fiction. So start where you are and tell stories, small stories. Don't start with massive stories. One bite at a time. One bite at a time. And the habit. Make it a habit. Like if you want to run a marathon, you just run a little bit from here to that gate over there, from the gate to the next street. And that's how it happens with telling stories. Share your stories with others, even if it's members of your family. Even if you visit just a nursery school or a primary school, or when family members are gathered, that is a story that you are telling already.
Yeah, and it's true, Ma. And I always tell people my book is really a collection of stories and things I care about. And you're right, it started small, and we will still have a proper platform where I'll talk about how the story. But I that resonates with my spirit so much. But that's where you are, Ma. And then there's another question. The question is a question for Mamton and Bongeka. How can we connect storytelling to health, to healing or health?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the storytellers are healers, no? And also, when you look at the number of people that are depressed, that are lonely, other people who say, I don't know where to start. Mambu's good, what's wrong? Where is it hurting? Start with something small and taking opportunities when somebody wants to listen to you. Talk to other people. It doesn't always have to be you finding a psychologist. Sometimes there are people around you who wish to hear you. And so talking about the things that are difficult, it is a load halved when you talk about what is difficult on your shoulders. Sometimes people feel like maybe what I think is a problem is not really a problem. But I so it's too silly. It's okay. Nothing is too silly. If it hurts you, then it's important. You
Yeah.
know, like if you think that you have a dream and you think, it's nothing, your dream is just as important. So that healing, when your dream is affirmed by another person, that is healing. You see, and the same thing with mental health and other forms of health, or people talking about a wound that is covered. A wound that is covered can never be healed. Some things that we've gone through and we think asikhulumi ngayo, like asikhulumi nje ngaleyo nto ke, asiyithinti nje, and we keep hiding certain things that have happened, and you keep going back to it when you're alone. How are you going to heal? How are you going to get better? And you're stuck in one place because you can't move forward. And so stories of all forms and all genres, and sometimes filmmaking as well. I think South Africans have got a big responsibility to make better films than we are making today. We've got a responsibility. Really, really, there's a big place that is dry out there waiting for South African films. So let's get going. There are many stories to be told.
Beautiful. And Ma, just to add to that as well, for me, and it comes from, we had a conversation earlier about this idea of hope and how hope is so important to live with hope. For me, storytelling incubates hope. It is one of the incubators of hope in a person, and that contributes to healing, mental healing, spiritual healing, emotional. I remember, even in times when I'm really down, when I hear a story, whether it's a story about somebody who has gone through a similar experience, somehow that invokes hope in me to say, oh, okay, I can also transition from that. So it is really one of the platforms or tools that truly can incubate hope, and hope is so critical, for anybody or for any human, really. So yeah, that's just my contribution to that question around healing and health.
And then hope it should be our walking stick as a people, as a nation. Hope. Kunesisho sesizulu esithi nalapho lingekho khona iqhude kuyasa. Even when the cock doesn't crow, dawn will break.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Even when the cock doesn't crow, dawn will break.
Beautiful. Wow. And then there is a last question here. How do we preserve storytelling since African storytelling is largely passed from one generation to another?
That's easy. We tell the stories to one another. We do storytelling performances. We write plays. They are born out of story. We write dance productions. They bear resemblance to the mother, the story. We write songs that make sense. We write songs that tell stories that will become classics. You see, that's how we preserve story. We design, as fashion designers, attire that speaks to a certain background that we come from. That is story. It bears resemblance to the mother. That is the story. And so there's no way. People say, is storytelling dying? Hello. Storytelling is not dying. For as long as there shall be people on earth, there shall be stories. You see? And so stories are all around us. And also, I think when we look at African storytelling, we shouldn't think of African storytelling as something that's isolated. We find synergies. When I meet storytellers from Iran, they tell stories. Aibo, Nani, you got a story like that. A storyteller from Uganda, a storyteller from Argentina. Aibo, that's interesting. We also have a story. We are all one people. We were born from one root, all of us. So people, when they think of African storytelling, they think of something that is isolated, something that is smaller and less than all the other stories of the world.
Wow, beautiful. So I see our time is limited, and thank you, Ma, for those. I want to, before Ma closes us out with a beautiful song, and then we done with the live. This thing of storytelling is so deeply close to me, Ma, and I want to share something. I want to read something I wrote. It's not even in the book. I didn't write this in the book, but I shared it on social media. And for me, it was around this idea that storytelling is a live language. Because and how it became a love language for me was through Umkulu, my grandfather. And I want to just read that post quickly. So I posted a picture of my grandfather on my maternal grandfather, Warren Banda. So I'll share that. I'll read that quickly, and then I'll hear your thoughts around this idea of storytelling being a love language. So I'll quickly read it. And it reads, "This is my grandfather, Warren Banda. He was born on the 12th of November, 1911 in Malawi. He passed away on the 27th of January, 2004 in Tongat. I only got to know my grandfather for 15 years of my life. In all the years that I knew him, he was blind. Because my grandfather was blind, he couldn't play or take us to places like other grandfathers could with their grandchildren. But Umkulu was my first encounter with a storyteller. He loved us through the stories he told us. I think Umkulu knew that he couldn't take us anywhere or do what others could do because he couldn't see with his physical eyes, but he could see with his imaginary eyes. So storytelling is an inheritance from my grandfather. One of my deeply held beliefs is that storytelling is a love language, and I believe that the storytelling gift has been passed down to me. The memory of my grandfather lives on in me. Thinking in Full Color, my book, is a work of love because it honors my grandfather's legacy. My grandfather shared stories with transformative lessons. Storytelling continues to be one of my favorite formats in transforming complex thoughts and human experiences into something everybody can understand."
Yay, those transforming moments. Those transforming moments. I hear you. I hear you. And indeed, it is a love language. I always tell people that I was my grandmother's garden. I was watered with love. I was watered with love. She told me so many stories. She loved me so much. She fortified me and prepared me for the hard times ahead. The Almighty God must have whispered in her ear, Thanda lengane. Izobhekana neyingqinamba, thanda lengane. I was watered with love, and
Wow.
I'm grateful for that. And looking at a person who tells stories, they cannot take you physically to other places, but they take you far away. My grandmother's stories took me to places above the clouds, below the ocean, inside baobab trees, in foreign difficult lands and forests, and deep in the caves in the Drakensberg. She took me everywhere through story. She let my imagination fly. And I am who I am today because of those stories and all that love that I was watered with. Through 2020, I was working on this book. It's called Our Storytelling Tree. This book is called Our Storytelling Tree. There is a page I'll share with you when you talk about what it means to be a storyteller.
I wear the stories of my people like armor. They see me through the worst of times. Dr. Gcina Mhlophe. Beautiful.
Yeah. So for me, I wear the stories of my people like armor. Everywhere I go, I carry the stories of my people with pride.
Wow.
And I travel to many, before Nhambe, I travel to many countries, and I'd be in some dressing room, and then I'm called, you're about to go on stage. And I do a lot of solo performances. And whether I'm in the Philippines, I'm in Singapore, I'm in Senegal, doesn't matter where I am. And then you know how people introduce you. They say all these accolades until you think, should I even go on stage, man? Disappointed, and when I'm sitting in my dressing room, I sing this song because it gives me strength and to know that hope does always live inside me. And the last part of the song says, may I not fail because I was too timid. May I not fail because I was too pompous. So that is the song I sing to myself all the time, everywhere I go. Sometimes before I go on stage, that's what I'm humming. Mangingalahli ukho lolwami leyonto la nethemba malihlale nam lixhase imizamo yam. Gingawi ngobugwa lahama nangokuziqhayisa kwam. Gingawi ngobugwala bam nangokuziqhayisa kwam. Nangokuziqhayisa kwam. May I not fail because I was too timid to even try. May I not fail because I was too pompous and full of myself. That's a song from the Methodist Church, and I sing this song to myself to remind myself that I'm not here because I'm superwoman. I'm here because so many people have contributed to the woman in front of you. From my family, from my community, from the teachers who taught me, from the leaders I've worked with the freedom fighters that have come before me. Oh, Mama Usisulu, oh, Mamu Winnie Mandela, oh, Mamu Helen Joseph, so many people, Mamu Fatima Mir, oh, what an amazing freedom fighter, oh, Mamu Loretta Ngobo, all of these people that came before us, let's honor them, let's honor them. And so for me, I must not be too timid to do anything, I must not be too pompous, and I beg you, young people of my country, go on. Whatever it is that you feel is your purpose, follow it. Use the gifts that the Almighty has given you. And when you achieve, don't behave like a person, oh, I do fucking self-raising. Go around showing off. No, 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 no. When you've achieved something, uplift others. Uplift others. That is the African way.
Wow, Ma, beautiful. But you still need to, because we're about to close off now. Oh yes, I see Unosi has shared. I just firstly just want to thank every single person who's dialed into the conversation as we wrap up. I think Ubonga and giving thanks is so crucial. It's something that I've been taught at home to say thank you. My parents have taught me that, and it's something I live. So, and I mean, it follows my name, Bongeka, to give thanks consistently. Yeah, we are Bongeka. So I want to everybody who's joined us, but Ma, also just more especially you, not just for just today, but thank you for the life that you've chosen to live, to die to so many of the pleasures of fame, to surrender to a purpose that is much higher and much bigger than what you even fathom, because it has impacted our generation. You have left a legacy in us, and we will continue to run with the baton for the next generation. The seed that you have planted lives in us, and we are so grateful. And we want to know, even when you transition out of this world, that we will continue, and Nati, we will invest in the next one. And we thank you so much for that. And I just want to say to everybody, Unose has shared, if you want to get yourself a copy of the book, Thinking in Full Color, you can go to our Pen the Vision page, which is www.penthevision. Well, it's in the chat room, and you can order yourself a copy of the book. But there's still more that we are going to do and talk about around the book. And then, Ma, are there any concluding thoughts before you sing us out and then we are done? Just in amazwi akho okugcina to wrap up our conversation for this evening. Is there anything? I'll hand over back to you.
One of the biggest things that the Almighty ever did for me was giving me the title of being called Umama, to be the mother of Nomakwezi, Inkanyezi Yami. I am so privileged to have Inkanyezi Yami in my life, and my family, my extended family. Family is so important to me, and friendships are important to me. I don't call somebody my friend. I'm not joking. When somebody is my friend, I honor them. They matter to me. And nobody's forced to like me. So those people who choose to like me, to call me friend, I treasure them. So those are very, very important things that we must share with one another, because other people assume then you deserve to be loved. You deserve everybody to be. No. There are people who will love you. There are people who will not love you, and that's okay. And the same thing about motherhood. I've been mother to many children even before my daughter Nomakwezi was born. and my daughter is here, and I am mother to many more people, and I take on this role of being umama in many places where I go, and I celebrate that uNkulunkulu uyazi ukuthi leli qhaza anginikeze lona uzongisiza kanjani, those multivitamins azonginika zona. But mostly I say I live on vitamin G. That's vitamin gratitude. I'm grateful for life. I'm grateful for good health. I'm grateful for having a home. People are homeless out there. People don't have work. People don't have many opportunities that I have had. But the respect that was given to me as a child, I carry respect with me. I respect people I come into contact with, whether they're young or old, black or white, whatever religion, whatever culture. I respect other people because everybody deserves that. And so that's what I would like to share. And I thank the Almighty for giving me this platform to talk to you, Bongeka Mhlongo. Bongeka, ngibonga kakhulu, because there are other people who would have loved to say many more things than what I've said, and they don't get those privileges. Mina ngiyabonga.
Siyabonga, Ma. And on that note, Ma, please sing us out with a song that's in your heart, and we are done for the evening. I love you, everybody who's joined us. May you be blessed. Ma, over to you.
Siyabonga. Bonke abadecide ukuthi babe nathi namhlanje. You know, when we think of the stories of our people, I always talk about the bones of memory. And so this is the song I'll sing out. I wrote this song when I did the facilitation of the women during the what is it called, the reconciliation, those testimonies at Constitution Hill. And so this is the song. It's on my CD now, and I'm so glad we recorded it. Nobut Beg. Where do they come from? Tales so brave, tales so sad. Some are so funny, so crazy, unbelievable. Hi, bo. They come from the bones of memory. Watch my eyes, hear my voice. I tell you true. These tales are from the bones of memory. These tales are from the bones of memory. These tales are from the bones of memory, of memory, of memory, of memory, of memory, from the bones 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 of memory. Magwande.